Hello, you're tuning into VTV News live from Hanoi. I'm Michael Liu, and here's the top news for this hour. Overseas oil drilling to aid energy security, boosting Vietnam-Algeria cooperation. Vietnam to step up disaster mitigation efforts, reducing risk and possible damages. Thừa Thiên Huế Springs attract more visitors as weather heats up, bringing a new source of income for the local people. Now, first off, Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng and his entourage arrived in Lisbon on Wednesday morning for an official visit to Portugal at the invitation of his counterpart, Pedro Passos Coelho. As scheduled, Prime Minister Dũng will hold talks with Portuguese President Aníbal Cavaco Silva and attend a business forum to discuss specific measures to elevate economic cooperation. Despite gradual growth, trade turnover between the two countries reached only $364 million last year, a modest figure which is not in line with their fine friendship and potential. This is Prime Minister Dũng first official visit to Portugal on the occasion of the 40th anniversary of diplomatic ties. The visit will conclude on June the 4th. Earlier, Vietnamese Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng stated with Algerian President Abdelaziz Bouteflika at a meeting on Monday that the Vietnamese government and people wish to consolidate the traditional relationship with Algeria as a priority in the nation's foreign policy as well.
Briefing President Bouteflika on outcomes of talks with Algerian Prime Minister, the Vietnamese leader said both sides extensively discussed issues of mutual concern, especially on ways to deepen cooperation. Prime Minister Dũng hoped the Algerian government would create favorable conditions for Petro-Vietnam to extend exploration and production into Algeria's Beersheba oil field. He further added that Vietnam was willing to create favorable conditions for Algerian businesses to invest in Vietnam. President Bouteflika said both nations should keep nurturing their traditional ties. He highly valued the outcomes of talks between the two prime ministers, especially the agreement on tightening links in politics, economics, culture, education and defense. On the same day, Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng received the head of the Algeria-Vietnam Parliamentary Friendship Group, Malum Hossein, and chairman of Algeria-Vietnam Friendship Association and Vietnam Vo Vinam Federation in Algeria.
More on Algeria-Vietnam cooperation. With ever-growing demand now casting a burden on the country's energy resources, Vietnam is now looking abroad for oil and gas, with investment in Algerian oil now deemed as one of the most successful overseas projects of the Vietnam National Oil and Gas Group.
Petro-Vietnam has been able to find oil in the Beersheba and Mom oil fields after 12 years of drilling in the Sahara Desert. The Petro-Vietnam Exploration and Production Corporation, or PVEV, under the Petro-Vietnam, is now on the very last steps to put the Beersheba oil well into operation. The 15 oil wells will boast about 1 billion barrel capacity, well beyond the corporation expectations.
After a rigorous exploration period, we have been able to exploit the oil here. We think there's a 20,000 barrel a day reserve, which offers massive commercial potential.
PVEV now holds a 40% stake in the Beersheba joint venture with Thailand and Algeria partners. Revenue is expected to top $100 million for the first year, double from the third year onwards. The initial investment will be recouped within 6 years, while the project will run for about 25 years. This is just one of the 20 overseas projects of Petro-Vietnam in 13 countries worldwide.
Looking for resources overseas is our long-term strategy to ensure energy security. Exploring oil and gas overseas will help us to become a multinational corporation and prepare us for future international integration.
Many leading nations in oil exploitation have given in to the extreme conditions presented by working in this desert. Petro-Vietnam's success in prospecting oil in Algeria has opened up an opportunity for overseas energy investment while bringing Vietnam one step closer to advancing in a tough business.
The Consulate General of Switzerland in Ho Chi Minh City was inaugurated yesterday, marking the development of bilateral cooperation and diplomacy between the two countries. The new facility is located on Bitexco building in the heart of Ho Chi Minh City, which allows for easy access and increased interaction with the local community. The establishment of a new Swiss diplomatic agency reflects this country's increased faith in Vietnam's economic and cultural potential. This office will facilitate Vietnam and Switzerland's economic partnership and stimulate Swiss investment in Vietnam. In 2014, Vietnam welcomed 30,000 Swiss tourists. 80 Swiss-owned businesses are now employing 15,000 Vietnamese workers, and Vietnam and Switzerland plan to achieve 30% growth in tourism and trade year on year. The Vietnam People's Navy received 2 new missile ships yesterday from Ba Son shipyard in Ho Chi Minh City after a series of testing by the Ministry of Defense. Constructed locally after the Russian Monya-class model, the 2 new warships are equipped with 4 missile systems and an advanced navigation system along with weaponry. Battleships 277 and 378 can reach up to 36 nautical miles an hour. The successful construction of these modern vessels reflects Vietnam's increased technological capabilities and spared great expense for the state budget. A third pair of these ships are now under construction and will be delivered to the Navy in 2016. This is all part of a bid to enhance Vietnam's defense of sovereignty and regional stability. Vietnam and Russia aim to boost two-way trade turnover to $10 billion by 2020. To reach this goal, links between small and medium-sized enterprises, otherwise called SMEs, from both countries is expected to further strengthen. As part of these efforts, trade promotion programs have been held on a more frequent basis in both countries. The following report takes a closer look.
The number of trade fairs between the Vietnamese and Russian businesses like this has significantly increased in recent times. Events like this give firms from both countries more chances to scope out potential partners and business opportunities.
Vietnam is potentially on the threshold of breakthrough. We also find it easy to work with the small and medium-sized companies in Vietnam, as they have Russian-speaking staff. Vietnam's SMEs are lacking capital, which is stunting their growth, so investment from Russian companies would be beneficial.
However, there currently are limited conditions for the cooperation.
Russian businesses are paying a lot of attention to Vietnam. However, they are just looking for the chance to invest, as they know little else about business environment. In addition, they also need to build good relations with Vietnamese enterprises, but that isn't easy.
This is a meeting between Russian business from the Russian city of Novosibirsk and their Vietnamese partner. Sergei Ivanov is director of Novosibirsk City SME Assistance Fund. He often works closely with his Vietnamese counterparts to arrange meetings like this.
We often arrange meetings for firms from the two countries as well as exhibitions to introduce our city's products. Before visits by our city's firm to Vietnam, we often contact Vietnam businesses in advance and inform Vietnamese enterprises of what our firms are interested in, so we can set up more useful meetings. We targeted Vietnam ages ago, but we only met Vietnamese businesses within the last 6 months, and today we have signed our first ever cooperation agreement with a Vietnamese company.
Experts claim that it isn't easy for businesses to enter new markets, but over the past few years, the number of trade promotion activities between the firms from the two countries has risen significantly in both Russia and Vietnam, indicating closer ties in the future.
A cooperation agreement between the Japanese Committee on Study of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries Strategies and Vietnam's Ministry of Science and Technology was signed on Tuesday in Hanoi. One of the important commitments was to help Hải Dương, Quảng Ninh, Bắc Giang provinces export 1,000 tons of lychees to 6 foreign markets in 2015. Japan has also committed itself to helping farmers in these provinces in planting, harvesting, storage, processing and export using high-tech applications. Also on the same day, the Japanese committee signed another cooperation agreement with the Vietnam Academy of Science and Technology. The agreement focuses on the use of high-tech applications in developing agriculture, forestry and fisheries industries, as well as helping Vietnam mitigate the impact of climate change in the years to come. Now let's have a look at how the Vietnam dong is performing against other currencies today. Still ahead on VTV News, National Assembly deputies discuss custody and detention, clarifying the rights and responsibilities of detainees. Ninh Thuận farmers suffer from prolonged drought. Stay tuned for more stories are still to come right after the break. Continuing the discussions on the draft law on custody and detention on Tuesday, National Assembly deputies emphasised the significance of protecting the rights and health of people in custody or detention. According to National Assembly deputies, the quality standards in temporary detention centres and medical services for people in custody or detention should be improved to match Vietnam's constitution. In addition to that, the rights and obligations of people in custody or detention should be clarified as well. The rights included voting, visiting and hiring a defence lawyer. Deputies also suggested preferential policies for staff and officers working at temporary detention centres. Now, starting from Wednesday morning, Vietnam will require visitors from South Korea to fill in medical history forms. This is Vietnam's latest move to prevent Middle East respiratory syndrome, otherwise called MERS, from entering the country. On average, Vietnam receives about 10 flights carrying thousands of tourists from South Korea every day. Prior to this, the Ministry of Health instructed health screenings at airports for passengers from 9 Middle East countries. MERS is similar to the virus that caused severe acute respiratory syndrome, otherwise called SARS, which emerged in China in 2002-2003 and killed some 800 people. According to the World Health Organization, otherwise called WHO, the MERS's fatality rate of this is 40%, and it is hard to detect the virus as the symptoms are similar to other regular respiratory diseases as well. Now, moving on to some other news. 6,000 hectares of rice were left abandoned in the winter-spring crop, and that number has increased in the summer-autumn crop. That is what farmers in the south-central coastal province of Ninh Thuận have seen suffering due to severe drought since the beginning of this year. In addition to delayed production, Ninh Thuận farmers have had to face other challenges that have threatened their livelihoods.
Due to the prolonged drought, nearly 400 hectares of rice fields in Phuc Nam Commune have been barren since the beginning of 2015.
A great number of the young and middle-aged labor force have left the commune to work in other areas. Old farmers who have stayed on have had to rely on their livestock. Thiên Thị Lách has been still struggling to keep her flock of sheep healthy from the severe weather.
It has not rained for a long time. Water for production mainly comes from the rain. So if there's no rain, we have no choice but to abandon fields.
The drought has affected nearly 80% of the 2,500 households in the Phước Nam commune. In addition to the effects on production, the prolonged drought has also caused a shortage of food in some areas. Even if they are able to produce rice, farmers still have to buy more for everyday meals.
Most farmer households have been suffering from the lack of food. We are making a list to provide them support.
According to the provincial authorities, 20 reservoirs in the province are dry. The remaining water only fills 7% of the desired capacity. In addition to support, local authorities are helping farmers to cope with the situation.
In drought-hit areas, farmers have been asked to postpone rice farming to focus on livestock. Water resources should be used for everyday activities and livestock farming.
June is the peak time for the drought, and farmers' incomes are limited where their savings are running out. The drought in Ninh Thuận province is forecast to go on until September, when the rainy season finally arrives.
Vietnam has put forward a plan to mitigate disaster risks for the 2016 to 2030 period in a conference held yesterday in Hanoi. The event introducing the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction was jointly held by the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development and the UNDP. VTV reporter Thanh Tung has more.
Before the Sendai Framework was born, Vietnam had implemented the Hyogo Framework of the United Nations since 2005 to build capacity in responding to natural disasters. Since then, the country has achieved promising results, especially in lowering the death toll.
From 2005 to 2010, fatalities from disasters are about 400 to 500 per year. But from 2010 to 2015, death toll remains under 150 each year.
After 10 years implementing the Hyogo Framework, 187 UN members adopted the Sendai Framework, a new blueprint for disaster risk reduction last March in Japan. According to the 15-year framework, cooperation in science and technology is a key factor in disaster risk reduction. This is also a key element in Vietnam's strategy in response to disaster risk.
We have limitations in disaster forecasting. Therefore, we need to apply space technology, as well as share modern technology with other nations to improve our forecasting capacity.
In addition to disaster forecasting, international experts also recommended that Vietnam should further the involvement of locals in risk assessment to develop disaster response plan.
Vietnam needs to invest more in an existing program 1002 on community-based disaster risk management in 6,000 communities in Vietnam. Discuss with them to analyze the risk together and decide what sort of actions are needed. Women and men, but also children, can be involved.
According to the Global Assessment Report on Disaster Risk Reduction, the expected average annual losses from earthquakes, tsunami, tropical cyclones, and river flooding are now estimated at $314 billion in the built environment alone. Therefore, investment in disaster risk reduction and management is considered essential to sustainable development in the context of climate change.
DK1 is the name of the economic, science and service blocks built on the nation's southern continental shelf for scientific research, oil exploration and protection of the nation's sovereignty. The soldiers here have to live with challenges and harsh conditions every day, but recently they had an emotional meeting with people from the mainland, and we'll bring you more in the following story.
This is a DK-1 rig number 15 in the southern continental shelf of Vietnam. After a long trip, visitors were told stories about the sacrifices made by the courageous soldiers for the country. Here, they paid tribute to their fallen soldiers. These guests all wanted to give the soldiers on the rig a boost. However, high waves and strong winds prevented them from reaching the soldiers.
The soldiers also wanted to meet the visitors to receive material and spiritual support from them, but we cannot reach them due to weather conditions. We're all sad. This is the second time that I've been to this area to meet the soldiers, but I failed to get there on both of my visits.
The delegation made huge efforts to deliver the gifts to the soldiers on the platform and the fisheries control ship nearby. Now they have all gathered in a ship's cabin. Here, hosts and guests talk to each other using walkie-talkies. The guests receive updates on the soldiers' lives, their daily meals, and also their work at sea. Following certain requirements, many songs were sung over the next 2 hours.
This is the most memorable experience of my life. Even though I'm a man, I burst into tears when we were singing the songs. Technical conditions, though restricted, cannot prevent us from singing with the soldiers. I can feel the warm atmosphere here and the love around.
The visit left a deep impression on these guests, but it has strengthened their belief in the nation's safety, with the courageous soldiers who protect them and national sovereignty.
Persia once was seen as a country where people walked on silk carpets and spoke the language of poetry. While Persian poetry has not found popularity in Vietnam so far, new efforts are being made to promote and introduce the best of Persian and modern Iranian literature to the country. We'll look at more in the following story.
The sons of Adam are limbs of each other, having been created of one essence. When the calamity of time affects one limb, the other limbs cannot remain at rest. If you have no sympathy for the troubles of others, you are unworthy to be called by the name of a human. These lines of Sadi Shirazi, a major poet from the 18th century Persian Empire, were inscribed at the entrance of United Nations headquarters in New York. In Vietnam, his works has been introduced in a special edition of a literary journal. Simple yet profound, experts believe that Sadi's poem and Persian literature bear some similarities with Vietnamese literature.
Iranian literature has many things in common with Vietnamese traditional literature. This affinity appears in folklore and others. They are close in the sense that literature is related to social and intellectual life. Famous Iranian authors share similar philosophy with Vietnamese big names like Trần Nhân Tông, Nguyễn Trãi or Nguyễn Du.
Introducing Sadi's poem is just the very first step of promoting Persian literature and cultural exchanges between Vietnam and Iran.
Introducing Persian literature will have bolstered cultural ties between Vietnam and Iran as well as mutual understanding of people from the two nations. This is a long process and there are many things to do to strengthen bilateral ties.
Language now remains as the biggest barrier between the two cultures. Enhancing education, cooperation and language training will be a good start for bringing two countries closer in the coming time.
Only a few people in Vietnam speak Persian and only a few Iranians know Vietnamese. Therefore, language training is very important. Recently, the two countries have signed a cultural cooperation agreement. Student exchange and mutual visits by cultural delegations will be boosted.
Introducing Sadi's works to Vietnamese audiences is just part of the ongoing efforts to promote Iranian culture in Vietnam, helping alleviate cross-cultural understanding between the two countries.
With the summer beginning and temperatures reaching peak in many parts of the country in the past week, tours to rivers and natural springs have seen a rise in popularity. The following report comes from a natural spring in the central province of Thừa Thiên Huế.
Suối Voi or Elephant Spring is located in Lộc Tiến commune. Sheltered within the forest, the spring has become a destination for many tourists across the nation to escape the heat.
I think destinations like this are very much needed in these weathers. Elephant Spring is beautiful and the water is very refreshing.
We heard about this place in Ho Chi Minh City and that the water here would be very nice. So we've come here for our children to enjoy themselves.
While previous years have seen tourists come to the spring mostly on holidays and weekends, this year has witnessed tour groups crowd the area on most weekdays. The number of tourists has reached 2,000 per day. With the area more densely populated, tourism authorities in the area have pushed efforts to ensure safety for all visitors.
We have increased the availability of lifeguards to watch over the area in case of accidents. At areas in the spring where the water is particularly deep, we have posted warning signs.
Apart from Elephant Spring, Thừa Thiên Huế has also seen a rise in visitors to other natural spring sites in the region like Nghị Hồ, Bầu Ghè or Mo Waterfall in Lăng Cô town. While this is a boost to the local tourism sector, authorities say they are making efforts to reduce the impact of high volume of tourists on the quality of the tourism sites, while ensuring safety and a memorable experience for all visitors.
Now, just before we say goodbye, let's take a look at the latest weather update. That's it for this edition of VTV News. Now simply log on to vtv4.vn, our YouTube channel VTV4 Go for updated content. Goodbye for now and thanks for stopping by.